everyone, and welcome to the Transformation Triumph Summit. My name is Jamie Allen Bishop, one of your hosts for this event. I am so honored and excited to introduce these authors with their special wisdom and insights to share. I imagine that you're here because one of the topics appealed to you, or perhaps you're on a transformation journey of your own. I welcome you to enjoy, listen, observe, and take away some of the insights that these authors are sharing so that you can streamline your transformation triumphs. And now, here's more about each of our authors.
All right, we are here to interview Dr. Sabrina Franconeri. Yes, I said it right. Dr. Sabrina, that's what I'm going to call you, just so that I don't mess it up again. I'm going to introduce you, is an international best-selling author and an experienced global department head with a demonstrated history of working in the legal and management consulting industries. She is a skilled career development, instructional design, public speaking, and curriculum development. Dr. Sabrina is a strong community and social services professional with a doctorate of science focused on information systems and communication from Robert Morris University. She is also an amazing person, very much into how we develop and process our own challenges in life through kindness. So please help me welcome Dr. Sabrina Franconeri.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Cheryl. It's so great to be here with you today to have a conversation.
Yay, we're so glad you're here. So let's start with, the book name is Transformation Triumphs. What made you say yes to that experience?
So I've been on a bit of a vulnerability journey, I think, over the past 18 months. And I really wanted to just continue to share my story and my experiences with people around struggles with imposter syndrome, struggles with working within very challenging, very demanding industries, and also learning how to take better care of my own mental health while transforming into the person that I truly wanted to become. And I'm starting to see her more and more. And a lot of my work goes back to more of my inner child. And I talked a little bit about this in our last presentation around kind of going back to the mentality I had in some ways at 3 years old, where you didn't take yourself so seriously, but you also knew that being kind was the most important part of your life.
And with bringing that part up, what do you think stops people from being kind?
Fear. I think fear and anxiety definitely play a factor in why people are not necessarily kind to each other. There's different ways to approach how you're going to interact with an individual. Sometimes I think when we're about to engage in a very difficult conversation, we're afraid. And we end up not necessarily coming off in the way that we had intended to. The conversation's not landing. Someone gets upset. You also, often think a little bit about how the person's reacting. I always, if I see tears forming in somebody's eyes, I know that I need to stop and not have this conversation right now or not have this interaction. The other thing I will say about that is I think sometimes from childhood, whether it was being a victim of bullying or perhaps even workplace bullying in the industries I work in, there's definitely a lot of that goes on, and people tend to struggle with perfectionism, and they develop a fear of making mistakes. And sometimes when you're so afraid of making a mistake, you could take it out on an interaction with others that wasn't necessarily intended. And believe me, I have seen it all.
Yeah, so speaking of challenges, just tell us a little bit more about how challenges might help us face or really become more kind.
I think you have to live it. I mean, I was just having a conversation with somebody, ironically, yesterday about kindness. And they said to me, whenever you have a situation where someone has been unkind to you or it hasn't gone the way that you thought, it's our job to really learn and grow from that. And he said, don't let anyone interrupt your symphony. And I love that expression because your symphony is being played on the stage. And if someone's phone rings or someone breaks a glass in the audience, that could really interrupt the whole symphony. But instead, we make the challenge part of our symphony. We grow, we learn, we develop as a result of what has happened and the challenge that has happened. And I've learned to be, I think, a little bit more kind to others and kind to myself in certain situations because I've had that symphony interrupted.
So what's your opinion on the ripple effect of kindness? If we can get more people engaged in this?
Mm-hmm. I think it's contagious in many ways, particularly in professional industries, non-female dominant professions, potentially even a lot of professional services organizations. I think that if you start to develop a leadership culture of kindness and empathy and psychological safety, people start trusting one another more. People are more willing to be open. People are not necessarily afraid to bring themselves to work. And in the book, I talk a lot about finally being able to bring my whole and authentic self to that space. And the reason I was able to do that is because I felt safe, because I felt like I was embracing that environment of kindness. Even though I was the one projecting it, it started popping up all around me.
I love that. I love that. When I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this, when it comes to transformation specifically in relation to the challenges that we experience and that kind of thing, where do you see kindness and or triumphs? I kind of see kindness as a triumph. So do you agree? And if so, why and how and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, I do agree with that because I think that like when you have overcome that hurdle of, not having your, not letting your symphony be interrupted or not having your apple cart be upset, and you can really come out on the other side and say, oh, that happened. I don't have to yell at anybody. I don't have to scream at anybody. I don't have to accuse anybody of anything. Whatever was supposed to happen is supposed to happen. And let's continue on within our day-to-day life or within that interaction. We don't necessarily need to take ourselves so seriously that we end up being projected as unkind. And that's where, to me, that transformation triumph is if you can have that realization and also live that realization, which is the harder part. We can all have it, but continue to experience it on a day-to-day basis. Whenever you become encountered with something like that, it's definitely going to really be a win in your book. I will say I had a very, very bad day yesterday, and I was very low when I came home, and just kind of thinking a little bit about putting this whole situation into perspective. Yes, somebody interrupted my symphony. However, there are ways that I can take the game ball back and come in with a fresh attitude, come in with, here's what I want to do, here's how I want to resolve the situation, and here's how we move forward. But another part of being kind to yourself and to the other person is to be honest. So maybe you won't have a relationship with that individual at the end of the interaction or the end of the job or the end of the situation. Maybe your relationship will become transactional, and that's okay because you're forming the life that you want to live. You're surrounding yourself with people that gravitate towards you. And it's also about finding the audience.
Interesting. And interesting you brought up your situation and because you brought up the thought process for me for leaders, and especially those that are dealing with employees. And I know that we haven't touched on it yet, but employee retention and what advice you would have for the leaders, those that are leading communities or others when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, I think with leaders, one thing I think that we have to really understand is that kindness and being nice are two different things. Psychological safety and being nice are two different things. Empathy and being nice are two different things. Being nice and being, what leaders are afraid of is being seen as a pushover is not the same thing as hearing what your employees and individuals within the organization say, putting yourself into their shoes. At the moment, the entire world is, very upset. A lot of people are struggling financially, emotionally, physically, and really thinking about, okay, at the end of the day, I have to be able to communicate a message to people who are not in the same situation as me. And you have to really go back to that read the room aspect as well. And it's not about being nice. It's really just about hearing them, understanding them, giving them a space where they feel like they can air any concerns. But also, part of psychological safety is showing that vulnerability. You have to show that you're an individual, and you have to show, I have feelings too. I'm hurting, I'm upset, I'm embarrassed, I'm happy, but they see that you're an actual person, not just an email or a talking head on the Zoom screen.
Love that. Love that. So when people get to a place of being kind, what does that look like? Like give some examples of what people can do, and maybe a specific example if you can think of one.
Yeah, so I think with like what you can do to be kind is I talk about different tips within the book. And I definitely think one of the things that you can do is really evaluate your state of mind when you're interacting with people. And my mother used to always say, like, your perception is your reality. So if you are perceiving yourself as, boy, I'm in a really bad mood, or I just look awful, I feel awful, I just feel like a nasty person, that's how you're going to be perceived by other people. If you're feeling that, you're not going to achieve any kindness. You're not feeling good about yourself mainly, and that's really what's projecting that situation, but you're also not making other individuals feel good about themselves. I've worked with a lot of leaders, managers, others that really have projected that sort of attitude, whether it was intentional or not. And what ends up happening is that people are not able to approach that person. They wonder why isn't the team responding, to my outpours, my reaching out to them, I'm trying to engage, because they don't trust you. And I think in order to be able to project kindness, you really have to take a look at yourself. I also think the other things that are important with that have to do with setting boundaries for yourself and for other people, and knowing when to draw the line, where to draw the line, and how to draw the line. And I mentioned, as I said yesterday, I had a very difficult day. And what I did end up, when I reflected a little bit more on what had happened, I actually said, you know what, I'm setting a boundary, and I'm okay with it. I have decided that this is the boundary. I'm going to feel better, and I'm going to be kind to other people as a result of setting the boundary, and other people are going to be kind to me.
I love that. I actually have another question that just popped into my mind, but where did your passion around this world, or around this word, come from? Like, what started this for you?
Yeah, so honestly, like within my background, I've worked in several law firms. I've worked in the management consulting world, and it's a very competitive arena. It's a very high pressure arena. You're dealing with a lot of individuals who have significant responsibilities to their organization, billable goals, financial goals, other things. And sometimes when we get very consumed in the process of whatever we're trying to achieve, we forget about the empathetic side, the human side, and where people have to be brought along. I think that we were doing a good job in many cases during COVID, because we were all on the same playing field at that time. We were all kind of locked in our homes and in this together. What has happened though, and this is why I sort of jumped on it post-COVID, we're starting to regress back into what we were, but 50 times worse, with how people are treating each other, how people are speaking to each other, how individuals are making other people feel, not reading the room, as I said earlier. And I basically just said, you know what, I had a lot of experience with this pre-COVID, during COVID, and now post-COVID. Let's talk about it. Let's continue to get the message out there, because I think people are wondering, what can I do to be kind to myself? What can I do to be kind to other people? And as my story is titled, Kindness Changes Everything, it really, really does.
Love that. Love that. And so if somebody wants to reach out to you to hire you, or to just to have a conversation with you, how did they do that?
Sure. I mean, you can go to my website, sabrinafranconeri.com. It's brand new. Also, you can email me, sabrina@sabrinafranconeri.com, and you can see my speaking engagements, my writing. If you want to have a coaching conversation or you just want to have a discovery call, I would love to engage a little bit more with you and just kind of understand where you're struggling, how I can help, and maybe if I can't, I can put you in touch with somebody who can.
So glad you said yes. That's all I got. So glad you said yes.
I'm so glad I said yes too, because I feel like I made wonderful new friends in the process. I have to make sure I'm staying, in better touch with people with the book and the collaboration. And I just, I love just being able to do this for Cheryl Clark. I wished I was in an exotic location. If you would have gotten me tomorrow, I would have been in Florida. However, I am in boring, freezing New York City right now. So we'll have to wait for my next travel trip.
Awesome. Good for you. Good for you.
Good. Thank you so much for being here today, Sabrina. We are so thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure, and I'll speak to everyone soon.
Yay.